I am the national flag of the Commonwealth of Australia. I belong to you and every Australian equally and freely. I was conceived before the dawn of the century. Designed by Ivor Evans, I was chosen over and above some 32,000 contenders. Although I was never an orphan, I was adopted on that sparkling spring day, the 3rd of September 1901, when I flew above the exhibition building in Melbourne. I was hailed and celebrated by people standing on the threshold of nationhood. They took me to their hearts. In that official ceremony, in the presence of our first Prime Minister, I became the chief symbol of a new nation, embracing the ideals of self-determination, national sovereignty, and personal freedom under God. I have been hoisted aloft over many buildings, from humble homes to the Houses of Parliament. I have listened to every Prime Minister declare his allegiance to me, to our monarch, and to our Constitution. I have witnessed the pledge of each one to protect and defend those freedoms we all cherish, even above life itself. I am carried with pride in ceremonies and processions. I have draped the caskets of your national heroes, carried to their last resting place. The caskets of kings and queens, eminent statesmen, generals, admirals, humble privates, and the unknown soldier. Wherever free men gather, wherever there is justice, faith, hope, charity, and truth, there too am I. At the tender age of 14 years, I received my baptism of fire in World War I. I flew proudly in those early days as we heard the call to do battle alongside those of our own kin. I was carried up the steep hills of Gallipoli, and I was there with the men in the trenches. I watched Simpson bring out the wounded on his doughy little donkey. I breathed the dust of the deserts and rode in glory with the Light Horse Brigade. I saw our finest sons fall and lie still. In death, they had given their last full measure of devotion. The war was over for them forever, but I kept my lonely vigil over their graves and stayed to watch the flowers grow, amid the crosses, row upon row, in Flanders fields. O young Australia, I was there with your fathers whom I longed to comfort. Look at me again, lest you forget.
This story about our national flag was written, produced and scripted by Larry Hannigan and spoken by John Downes. It was produced in Queensland in 1991 in defence of Australia's national flag, when a corporate organisation named Ostflag, comprising mainly multimillionaires and billionaires, sponsored a competition to select a replacement flag for Australia without consulting Australians, the corporate owners of our existing flag. A defence organisation, the Australian National Flag Association of Queensland, had already been formed in 1985 and played a major role in distributing this superb spoken history of our flag, which was a major influence in motivating a grassroots movement to successfully defend and retain our flag. As the menace of a flag change diminished, a new threat emerged, this time to change from our constitutional monarchy to a republic. And again, there was no grassroots organisation pursuing this goal. And again, the target was proposed and financed by powerful corporate identities. However, this time, Australians were to have a say about the threatened change to a republic, and a national referendum was held, culminating in a majority of people and all the states saying no to a republic. Prior to the Republic referendum, another national grassroots organisation, Australians for Constitutional Monarchy, was formed to successfully defend our constitutional monarchy. But the threat for change still remains, as the proponents hope that as time passes, nobody will know or understand that we have a constitution. A survey prior to the referendum in 1998 found that only 18% of those surveyed knew we had a constitution. To try and fill this dangerous vacuum, the following brief history and explanation of our Constitution has been written and spoken in the first person, in the hope that more people will know and learn about it. For it is the high watermark of world constitutions. If you know nothing else, remember, Australia is the most successful nation in all history because of its constitutional foundations. We became the first nation ever to choose our own flag and write our own constitution. No other nation did this or came from scratch to become a sophisticated industrial civilization in 150 years. The text was written and scripted by John Brett. It was edited by Professor David Flint and spoken by Graham Healy. My people, listen to me. I am the voice of the Australian Constitution, which if you only knew is the story about one of the greatest man-made successes in all time. Our Australia, the driest continent on earth, has become the most successful nation ever, coming in 150 years from an uncivilized, dry country into a modern, civilized, industrialized nation without any revolutions, civil war, major internal conflict, or coercion from outside. Other nations, some of whom have been in the making for 1,000 years or more, still have not achieved what Australia has accomplished in this short time. Just 100 years after the arrival of the First Fleet, citizens in every state were becoming conscious they were destined to become a new nation and began talking about forming a federation from the existing independent states. People were aware a new nation needed rules with a referee to be governed satisfactorily, and so, 20 years later, I was born. I am a covenant proclaiming the rules by which Australians agreed to be governed. I set limits to the exercise of power by government, allowing the government to exercise power only with its citizens' consent and authority, exercised through their representatives in Parliament assemblies. These rules to be changed only by national electoral consent and authority by means of a binding referendum. The existing states had been crown colonies where the rule of law had already been a cornerstone of their foundations, unlike many other previous new colonies around the world where the rule of men has caused so much bloodshed, instability and desecration, still evident in some other countries older than Australia. Australians, in forging this new constitution, which has been so successful, became the first nation in history to draw up its own constitution through common consent by those who were to live by it. All around Australia during the late 19th century, people attended the public meetings held and made submissions to the many conventions, finally voting in the referendums held in each state, which sanctioned the new federation, confirming me as your constitution. For thousands of years, people everywhere have wrestled with the problem of being controlled by leaders with unlimited power. There were only 4 previous written constitutions to which our constitutional founders could refer. These were the German, Swiss, Canadian, and United States constitutions. The American and Canadian constitutions had their roots in or were influenced by the English Constitution, which had evolved over the centuries and can be found in the customs, institutions and legislation by which the English and then the British has agreed to be governed. As befits the mother of all modern constitutionalism, the English Constitution is unique in that it is not reduced to a single document. The genius of Australia's founding fathers was that they not only captured the essence of the English Constitution, but they copied the important innovations and safeguards from those countries that had preceded Australia in writing a constitution. Our original founding institution, the Crown, was adopted as the referee, the same as the Canadians had chosen, as the custodian of all that is held in common, such as land tenure, the law, and the defence forces. From the Swiss, we took the referendum principle to facilitate changes to the Constitution. I avoided the problem of the American Constitution where, in a dispute leading to crisis, both power and authority devolve into the hands of the President, which effectively makes the President an elected king or temporary despot. I have delivered to Australians the penultimate constitution. My success, borne out in the long period of stability I have delivered, and by the testimony of the millions of people who flocked here seeking my protection. More important than the references and lessons from the preceding constitutions, which had adopted parts of the New Testament revelation about the power of men, our Australian founding fathers incorporated in me much more of the New Testament revelation, which its antagonists are now so happy to accept because of the security I afford them. The major guiding influence of the founders was governments were to serve people, not people serve governments. Systems and institutions should serve people and not people serve institutions and systems. The practical application of the New Testament revelation that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, with its inherent implication that we build up from the individual, not down from the state. I am a constitution that disperses power. Power is divided between the states, which are represented equally in the Senate and the House of Representatives, consisting of members elected on the basis of population distribution, and the Crown, which is above transient politics, being represented and exercised by the Governor-General, who acts as my referee. This division of power was not new, previously existing within the states, where the division had been between the Crown, the elective Legislative Assembly, and the Legislative Council. The principle of the dispersal of power was taken from the temptation on the mountain, where Christ was offered all worldly power which he rejected, knowing that the possession of absolute power leads to absolute corruption of that power. My final stroke of genius was the separation of power from authority for the effective control of those exercising power on our behalf and benefit. The exercise of power by the elected executive, who are ministers of the Crown, was to be by the authority of our representatives in Parliament assembled. This crucial separation was derived from the famous incident when Christ was shown the coin embossed with Caesar's effigy, a dual symbol of power. When asked who the coin belonged to, the reply was, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but render unto God what is God's." Not the answer his tormentors sought, but clearly making the power of Caesar legitimate, but acknowledging God as the author of both Caesar and the people he ruled. Neither Caesar nor government should be the sole author of power, or its only exponent, as they were not the sole authors of man's worldly action and events, thus confirming that all power and authority arose from within every individual, not external to us or exclusive to Caesar. The subtlety and genius of our founding fathers who brought me into existence is barely understood by so many who have enjoyed and prospered by my legacy. I am a greater triumph than even my authors realized. The fact I am so little known, read, or understood is perilous to your continued safety and the protection I afford to all of us. My fellow Australians, treasure and guard me, learn and understand me, and I, your Constitution, will protect you into the future, as I have done so faithfully in the past, even though you may not have heard of me before this.